Last class we were dealing with mainly with what? Last class we were mainly dealing with. Can any one of you say what were we dealing with? Last class?
Fit.
Fit. Okay. And the various types of fit, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The various types of fit. Okay. So I hope so you remember. Basically, there are three types of fit. Can any one of you say what are the three types of fit mainly? Vishnu, could you give me an answer? What are the mainly the three types of fit mainly employed?
Clearance fit,
Yes.
transition fit, and interference fit.
Yeah. And again, they are subdivided to many, right? So the last class we were discussing about types of fit, which comes under the system of limits and fits. So all these fits and limits, everything comes under which topic? Can anyone if you tell me? All these limits and just can comes under which topic? Can anyone if you tell me? All this comes under any one of you.
Holland shop.
Yes. All this comes under not whole and shaft are the examples. This comes under the various measurements, Rahul Raji. Okay. This comes under the various measurements. All these are used for doing the measurements. That's what we say. Okay. All these are done for using the measurements. So this is what say. So today we are going to start with interchangeability and selective assembly. Okay. So just note down the heading interchangeability and selective assembly. Okay, interchangeability and selective assembly. That's what we are going to talk about today. Okay, we are going to talk about today regarding the interchangeability and selective assembly. I hope so. You have noted down the notebook. So I have shared the screen. This is the test book. Okay, so like this interchangeability and selective assembly, all this comes under the consideration of the various manufacturabilities. Okay, various manufacturabilities, that's what we say. Okay, so that comes with the interchangeability and selective assembly. Okay, that's the main. All this comes under with the various manufacturing aspects, that's what we say. Okay, various manufacturing aspects. So in the case of interchangeability, okay, it means an identical component manufactured at different locations by different personnels can be substituted for one another for use in assembly or for replacement without affecting the functioning of the component. That is, in one word what we can say, it means the identical components are manufactured. So this interchangeability and selective assembly comes with the same thing. Okay, so lot of parts are being manufactured. We can name it parts as a male part and female part, since the combination of both the parts become a common part. That's what we say. So regarding the combination of two parts, we have already discussed this the same module in the case of where in the case of limits fits, in the case of limits and fits, and also the principles of theories and tolerance, all that aspects. So when we came with interchangeability, the name itself, okay, the name itself tells what we mean. What can anyone of you tell me what you mean by interchangeability? Karthik, can you tell me what you mean by interchangeability? Karthik? Karthik Koteri, can you hear me?
Sir,
Can you tell me the word interchangeability means what? Hmm? Can you tell me the word interchangeability means what?
the capability for interchanging.
We can substitute the products, right? We can substitute the products if it is not available or any functional inability happens. all this come all this comes into action. Okay, that's what we say. Okay. Okay, Karthik, we can substitute the parts. There will be identical parts will be manufactured so that it can be reused. Okay, the same product can be used for two or three components. That's what we say. Okay. Okay, Karthik, got it?
Sir.
Okay. So, in the case of interchangeability and selective assembly, it's a very small topic, mainly related with the manufacturing aspects, mainly with the manufacturing aspects. So, not only with the manufacturing aspects, it also comes with the metrology aspect, that with the measurements, tolerance, allowances, all this comes under factor. So, it is mainly a dimensional parameter which helps in achieving precise dimensions and also to have adequate measures and proper functioning. That's what we say. So, in the case of interchangeability and selective assembly, okay, in the case of interchangeability and selective assembly, that's what will happen. In the case of interchangeability and selective assembly, what happens is manufacture of machine tools. Okay, manufacture of machine tools in the case of automobiles, IC engines, aircraft, etc. Okay, so mainly it is a manufacturing aspect where the manufacturing of machine tools happens. So regarding the manufacturing of machine tools, we have already learned the various aspects or the various parameters and various process which are considered under many machine tools in the case of manufacturing. I hope so. The last three modules we were discussing. Okay, can any one of you tell me the certain names of the various machining process? Mohammed Asaf, can you tell me the various machining process we have employed in this subject regarding the previous modules?
Broaching.
Yes, broaching. Yes, broaching. Not only broaching, which what else? Broaching, honing, milling. You remember lathe operations, various types of honing, lapping, grinding, all that. Okay. Okay, sir.
Yes.
So that's what we say in the case of interchangeability. So manufacturing of machine tools, like in the case of automobiles, IC engines, okay, aircraft engine, etc., require thousands of components which are identical. So there will be thousands of components manufactured for all this what for assembly. So in this, many components will be identical in such large scale production or mass production. The large scale production means number of identical components are manufactured. Okay, number of identical components are manufactured. That's what we say. Number of identical components are manufactured. So, in the case of interchangeability and selective assembly, there are manufacturing of machine tools, automobiles, IC engines, aircraft, etc. require thousands of components. Mainly require thousands of components which are identical, which are mainly identical. Then, in such large scale production or mass production, each male component should fit with corresponding female component. Each male component Okay. Each male component should fit with the corresponding female component without interchanging the parts present in a lot of identical items. Okay. That is only by interchanging the parts present in a lot of identical items. That's what we say. So, in the case of interchangeability, we manufacture various machine tools, automobiles, IC engine, etc., which require thousands of components. Mean large number of components are manufactured, which are almost identical. In such large scale production or mass production, each male component, you can see in the figure, a male component and a female component. So each male component should fit with the corresponding female component. So it's a combination of two parts. Okay, each male component should correspondingly fit with the female component without interchanging the parts present in a lot of identical items. That's it. Without interchanging the parts present in a lot of items. That is called random assembly. That is called random assembly. Besides a part, there will be so many male components and so many female components in the warehouse, which is already manufactured or produced or to be manufactured parallelly. But without any aspects, we will be connecting it and forming a part. That's what happens. So if this condition exists, it is called interchangeability, and in manufacturing, or it's called symbol interchangeability. Okay, so interchangeability is essentially very important factor and very much required in the case of mass production. And interchangeability is possible only when certain standards are strictly followed. Okay, so can anyone of you tell me what were the basic standards we have already described in our starting of the module? Can anyone of you tell me what are the basic standards, everything, in order to have the same identical products? I'll call Agash KM. Agash KM, can you tell me what were the basic standards? Yes, Agash, can you tell me what were the basic standards?
Sir, ഇതിൻ്റെ
Hmm. Ah, that
sir,
we
no,
have ah, ah, that we have already discussed. That we have already discussed. Basic standards. You don't remember in starting when we are saying the introduction to metrology? Anyone of you remember? No problem, Agash. You learned. So can anyone of you tell me other than Agash? I have told you in the starting of the module when we are doing introduction to metrology. We have just started the module on just 4 5 days before. Only. No one remembers? Okay, not a problem. Okay, Agash. So it is ISO. Can you Agash, can you tell me the full form of ISO? Agash, do you hear me?
yes, sir.
Uh, can you full? It's one standards ISO. Can you tell me
Standardization ആണ്
standardization? Yes,
organization
The international organization for standardization. Okay,
standardization.
okay, the international organization for standardization. That's what we say in the case of ISO. Okay, then comes the various standards in order to have interchangeability. That's a factor. So NBS, the NBS is national. If anyone doesn't remember, just note it down in your notebook. Okay, ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. ISO. Then other standard is NBS, National Bureau of Standards. Okay, National Bureau of Standards. The third one is ANSI. ANSI, that's the American National Standards Institute. Then we have the BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards, which is a national body for standardization in India. This BIS you will see in very commonly in jewelers advertisement, everything. You can check it out. Okay, in IS also you can see in many colleges everywhere we will be having ISO standards. So all the standards makes it permissible for making it unique for formation or uniquely forming the things. That's what happens in the case of interchangeability. So interchangeability is this. Okay, so now like in the case of interchangeability, it is mainly the manufacturing of machine tools. Okay, it is mainly the manufacturing of machine tools, automobiles, IC engines, aircraft, etc., which mainly require thousands of components. It's mainly require thousands of components which are identical. It is always identical. It is always uniform, so that it is almost a replica of the other product. We will not understand which is the same product. It will be almost the same, the dimensions, everything. And in that lot, if any error, like we have tolerance and elements, everything like 0.001, 0.02, all that we have discussed, that elements will be also considered. Okay, that elements will be also considered to an extent where but the components which are manufactured in this lat lot will be always the same and identical. That's why. So, in such large scale productions or mass production, large scale means every minute or every 5 minutes, like a component will be manufactured. That's what we say. Okay, so in such large scale productions, each male component should fit with the corresponding female component. Each male component. Okay, so each male component. Yesterday we were discussing about, I hope so, regarding this, which was that you remember, which was that. Can you tell me an example yesterday which we were discussing for the case of limits and fits? Shahzad, can you tell me yesterday what we were discussing about this limits and fits? Shahzad, are you available there?
Sir,
Yes, Shahzad. Can you tell me the other example which we are discussing this much days for the case of system of limits and fits, allowance and tolerance, two components? It was shaft and hole. Okay, it was okay, Moshe. It was shaft and hole, right? It was shaft and hole which we were discussing. It was mainly the shaft and hole. Okay, so here, okay, sir. Thank you. Okay. the shaft and hole. So it is that. Here we are saying it is a male and female component. So that's called a male and female component should fit in the corresponding female component without interchanging the parts. Without interchanging the parts present in a lot of identical items. Present in a lot of identical items. Okay, so this condition exists. It is called interchangeability in manufacturing or simply interchangeability. This is called interchangeability in manufacturing or simply interchangeability. That's what we say. Okay, this is called interchangeability in manufacturing or simply interchangeability. Okay, this is what we say. Then so if this condition exists, it is called interchangeability in manufacturing or simply interchangeability. So interchangeability is essential in mass production. Mass production means a product is being manufactured in a large numbers with respect to time. That's what we say. So in mass production, where interchangeability is possible only when certain standards are strictly followed. That's what we say. ISO, NBS, ANSI, BIS. There are various standards. As per it moves from country to country, standards to European standards, American standards, Indian standards. There are various standards. Okay, recognized by various governments, everything. It will be uniform to make it uniform. So it can be used for a variety of purpose. And with this standard application, we can say, this with this standard we can use for this purpose also. That's what. So the components will be universally manufactured. So the availability of components will be same, but the quality of the compound might be different. The parts manufacturing, the quality, the purpose, the material, and everything might be different. That's what. So, in interchangeability is essential in mass production, where it is possible only when certain standards are strictly followed. Required fit it is an assembly can be obtained by either. The required fit in an assembly can be obtained by either. So, a required fit, according to sometimes we loose fit, hard fit. There are various types of fit employed. There are various types of fit employed that may be loose fit, hard fit, or something other fits where it required a fit in an assembly which can be obtained by either. Okay. Now we can say about the full interchangeability. That is, if international standard is followed, we name it as full interchangeability. Okay, full interchangeability. Now, then it is partial standard, partial interchangeability. That is, if partial interchangeability happens if it is local standards are followed. In the case of interchangeability, it happens if the local standards are followed. So in the case of full interchangeability, before that, the parameters of interchangeability are what are the main parameters we consider for the interchangeability? In the main parameters which we consider for the interchangeability are the main parameters. Okay, the main parameters which we consider for the interchangeability are one is geometric. Okay, geometric, that is dimensions, shape, relative position, surface, and others. These are the various parameters we consider. Like what all? It's mainly geometric means what? Geometric parameters means what? In geometric parameters, what all positions we will be having? We will be having the dimensions. That's the overall dimensions, the length, breadth, depth, height, angle, everything. Then finally, the shape of the product. Okay, the shape of the product, how does it look like, shape, the various angles, all that. Then the relative position of the surfaces and others. Then the relative position of the surfaces and others. And the relative position of the surfaces and others. Then physical and mechanical, that's the specific gravity, hardness, strength, and others. Then the physical and mechanical, the specific gravity, hardness, strength, and others. Then the chemical composition, that's the chemical composition mixtures. Then the electrical products. All these are the various parameters in interchangeability. That is the geometrical, physical and mechanical, chemical, and electrical. These are the various parameters which has been employed here. So this is the facts. Then it comes to the types of interchangeability. Where types of interchangeability is, first one is full interchangeability, like all types of parameters. If interchangeability, if it is international standard, okay, then we can name it as full interchangeability or universal interchangeability. We can name it as full interchangeability or universal interchangeability. So in the case of full interchangeability means any component will match with the corresponding mating components. That is the case of full interchangeability means any component, okay, any component will match with the corresponding mating components without classifying the manufactured components into subgroups or without going for minor modification of the mating purpose. This is what happens in the case of full interchangeability or universal interchangeability. That's the full interchangeability means any component will match with the corresponding mating components. Okay, that is any component will match with the corresponding mating components without classifying manufacturing components. Okay, without classifying manufactured components into the subgroups or without going for minor modification. That's what I will say. So in the full interchangeability, we can also name it as universal interchangeability, where any component will match with the corresponding mating component. We take from that batch any component that will match with the corresponding mating component without classifying manufacturing components into subgroups, without classifying manufacturing components into subgroups, or without going for minor modification, or without going for any minor modification for the mating purpose. Then, for full universal interchangeability, international standards must be followed. For full or universal interchangeability, international standards must be followed by various manufacturing units. Okay, by various manufacturing units. That's what happens. So, for full or universal interchange, international standards must be followed by various manufacturing units. Then, it also requires machine capable of maintaining high process capability and very high accuracy. It also requires what machine capable of maintaining high process capability and very high accuracy. That's what happens in the case of full interchangeability. That is, all types of, in this case, the case of full interchangeability, all types of what? All types of parameters are ensured with accuracy that allows to perform the assembly or replacement and repair for any independently produced parts to obtain the finished item. That's what happens in the case of interchangeability. That is, the full interchangeability is there, all types of parameters are ensured. In this case, all types, yeah, full types, not all types, yeah, all types of parameters are ensured with accuracy. All types of parameters are ensured with accuracy that allow for performing the assembly, which allows for the performing the assembly, or for any independently produced parts to obtain the finished items, or for any independently produced parts for performing the item. That's what happens. Independently produced parts for obtaining the item or performing the item. This is what happens in the case of full interchangeability. Okay, that's what happens. Now in the case, and this is comes for international standards also. Now the second case is partial interchangeability. So in the case of partial interchangeability, okay, when local standard is used, okay, local standard is used, it is used that the part is produced anyway. Okay, so in the case of partial interchangeability, when local standards are used, okay, when the local standards is used, the part produced may not be used for replacing similar part. Okay, in the case of partial interchangeability. So in the case of partial interchangeability, when local standards is used, okay, when the local standards is used, the parts produced may not be used for replacing. The parts produced may not be used for replacing the similar part. The parts produced may be not be used for replacing the similar part in other countries or localities. That's what happens. So when local standards is used, that's a problem, not like the international standard. The parts produced may not be used for replacing similar part in other countries or localities. So it does not require high process capability. But when compared to the case of full interchangeability, it requires high process capability. Here, it does not require much higher process capability when compared with the full interchangeability, okay, of the machine. Therefore, the parts are less costly than the parts produced under full interchangeability. Therefore, the parts are always less costly. Okay, therefore the parts are always less costly than the parts produced under full interchangeability. This is what happens in the case of partial interchangeability, where local standards is used to produce parts which may be used for replacing similar part, okay, which may be used for replacing similar part in other countries or localities, and it does not require high process capability machine. Therefore the parts are less costly than the parts produced under full interchangeability. So this is what happens in the case of full and partial interchangeability. Like we can say, if we are manufacturing a product with respect to interchangeability, there are two factors. Like one is full interchangeability, other is partial interchangeability. And if we are having an export product and we are selling it outside, so we require a very high quality because it should be competent with the other competitors, and when if in any issue the parts gets damaged, it could be replaced, it could be manufactured, it could be done. It is universally accepted. It could be repaired easily, and the parts are easily availability. All that comes into consideration. For example, in the case we say, okay, the case of automobile, if some parts are worn out, the company may not have the parts, but the replica will be manufactured by a local assembler with the quality. But sometimes when it is made locally, what happens? The quality of the parts will not be the same as the company. But when the actual product or the actual company has been manufactured, it is in a large scale. Like if you can say Honda. Honda. Honda is a car company, it's a vehicle company where the parts are manufactured globally. It's why, so example is a Honda City. Honda City is available in almost or most of the parts of the world. So what happens? Automatically, the parts will be manufactured globally and the parts will be easily available. But what happens? Automatically, the production cost that when the standard is increased, the various standards are increased, the quality check is increased, so everything, the quality of the material, the process standards, all increase. So automatically, what happens? The price also increase. So automatically, what happens? The price also increase, which is related. But in the case of partial interchangeability, what happens is it's a locally manufactured. So the functionality will be the same. Okay, the functionality will be always the same, and not only the quality and everything will be a bit deteriorated or bit less when compared, because it might be not performing the basic standards. So and the availability of the same part will be different. So okay, the quality will be different, so it may worn out easily, or the fitting will be not tight fit, or it may be loose fit, and the standard dimensions will be not proper. All this may happen, but still what happens, the pricing range might be reduced. So it's can happen. So this happens in the case of what happens, interchangeability. And interchangeability again, it is divided into two types. That is comes in the one is full interchangeability, and other is partial interchangeability. Full, it is mainly universal interchangeability, it is found in almost all the countries. And the case of partial interchangeability, it is found in whole country. That's what happens. Then now comes with it was the types of interchangeability. Now comes with the selective assembly. Okay, now it comes with the selective assembly. So selective assembly have the various factors. Like this is the selective assembly where, okay, this is now comes to the selective assembly or group assembly. It's a combination. Okay, interchangeable selective assembly. So, like now in the case of selective assembly, okay, in the case of selective assembly, or it is also named as group assembly. I'm requesting your students to just note down the topics. Although we will be notes will be given, just note down the topics so that you will have an idea. Okay, what has been explained. Okay. Then in the case of selective assembly or group assembly, what happens? In selective or group assembly, the components produced by machine are classified into several groups. In the case of interchangeability, or in the case of interchangeability, what happens? Can anyone to differentiate? Agilam, can you differentiate? Here we have groupism, group according to the size. But in the case of interchangeability, what happens? Agilam, can you tell me?
Sure.
Ah, yes, Agilam.
അത് എന്തേ എന്റെ ബേസിസിൽ
Interchangeability in the base, when it comes to interchangeability, what is the difference when it comes to selective assembly? Hmm.
അസംബ്ലി അറിയില്ല സാർ.
Okay, fine, no problem. Okay, anyone else? Today I have not asked any questions to Mr. Rahul Rajiv. Rahul Rajiv,
Yes, sir.
uh, can you just differentiate? In selective assembly, it's a group assembly, but we have discussed almost the module with the interchangeability. In interchangeability, what will be the factor?
Interchangeability,
Uh,
standard,
uh,
okay.
my question is, does it have a group? Do we have a group in interchangeability?
No.
Okay, then what is that? Okay, you
Uh,
said you're right. This doesn't have a group. What will be there?
it-
Uh, don't hesitate. If it's a mistake, also not a problem. Correct it. Okay.
independent.
It will be independent. No. Whether it will be independent, then
uh,
whether it will be independent.
partial.
No problem. Okay. Okay then. Okay, Rahul. So, like in the case of interchangeability, in the case of interchangeability, it is produced. It's not a group. It is a the products are manufactured. Any product can be fit for the purpose. That's what. Not from the group. Any product has been manufactured will be serve the male. Any male component which is it can be attached to any female component. That's not any group or groupism or system like that. All the parts manufactured are identical and it will be fitting. The dimensions, everything will be the same. That's what I'm saying. Okay, it will be not forming a group. That's what happens. Rahul, are you clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now in the case of selective assembly, what is that? It is like a group assembly where the components produced are machined. You can see the figure. Where the components produced are machined by machine are classified into several groups according to the size. It's mainly classified into several groups according to the size. And then this is done both for hole and shaft. So the hole and shaft, I hope so you remember. Okay, we were discussing the hole and shaft example with a lot of points, lot of zero line, everything in the previous classes. So that's done with both one. It's done both for hole and shaft, where a group of shafts having a particular range of size will match properly with the corresponding group of holes. That's what happens. So it is always turned into a group. So for example, a group of shaft will be having 20 mm thickness, and group of holes will be having 21 mm of depth. That's what. So it's a group. Only that product, that shaft will be only inserted in that hole. It is a group. It's a combination of group. It cannot go fit universally in other slots. That's what happens. Okay. So here what happens is a group of shafts having a particular range of size will match properly with the corresponding group of holes. Because of wider tolerance, the manufacturing loss is also reduced. Because of wider tolerance, wider tolerance is available, so the manufacturing loss is also reduced. That's what happens. Then, as an example, if some parts, shaft holes, to be assembled are manufactured for normal tolerances of 0.01 mm, and the size distribution of the shaft holes follow normal distribution pattern as shown. You see, this is the normal distribution pattern. So an automatic gauge can segregate. Them into 10 different groups. See, an automatic gauge can segregate into 10 different groups with 0.1 mm limit. For selective assembly, a group of shaft with corresponding group of holes, say with height dot. Thus what happens is parts with tolerance of 0.001 mm are obtained due to the grouping and both the conditions. So that is what happens. Okay, that is what happens. An automatic gauge can segregate them into 10 different groups. I told you there's a group work. So it can be done 10 different groups with 0.01 mm limit for selective assembly of a group of a shaft with corresponding group of hole. Okay, to say with high gauge assembly or high gauge, thus parts with tolerance of 0.001 mm are obtained due to grouping and both the conditions. What happens? So into grouping and both the conditions, the various factors are like high quality, that is narrow tolerances, then low cost, 0.01 mm man tolerance are possible. How it is very important that the two components parts to be filled together must be kept with normal distribution. That's what happens, normal distribution. So this is how happens in the case of selective assembly. In selective assembly, as a definition, what we can say, in the case of a selective assembly, we will be having an automatic gauge. In the case of automatic gauge, what is available in the case of automatic gauge? We will be having parts which is manufactured in a group. So example, we are saying a shaft and a hole, where in the case of a shaft and a hole, what happens? The shaft will be having a tolerances and the hole will be having a tolerances. So the particular group, that shaft and hole will be combined together to form a part. That's what happens. So in conclusion, the full interchangeability. Okay, in conclusion, what happens? The full interchangeability requires high precision, costly machine, skilled workers, and ultimately the parts are costly. Whereas in selective assembly requires less precision, less costly machine with less skilled workers, operator, and therefore the parts are cheaper, although the quality can be maintained by grouping. This is what the example. So I can say the countries which are manufacturing this. Like in conclusion, full interchangeability means okay, it's like Japan products. Okay, Japan. Older we should say Japan products are very high quality, and we can say the same part of replicant is manufactured by China products. It's the cost is 10 times lower, but the functionality, everything will be the same, but the quality will be different. Okay. Example we can say. Can anyone could tell me examples regarding the interchangeability and selective assembly? Can anyone of you say me example after telling all this? Amit, can you tell me an example regarding this? Can you tell me an example?
Sir,
After the whole class, I'm asking example for interchangeability and selective assembly. We can say mobile phone, iPhone. You like mobile phone, iPhone. Okay, iPhone is being manufactured from US. So automatically, what happens is okay. So automatically, what happens? I mean, like the iPhone is manufactured from US. So automatically, what happens? The uh, the same component. iPhone is really costly, but the same features, same specification. There are various other mobile phones that are manufactured from China or some other country. The same specification. Okay, only the quality will be differentiation. But what happens? The cost is good. That's one example. Okay, Amit, are you clear in that? So all the types of
Yes, sir.
are manufactured. Okay. Okay, like so this is what happens in the condition, the conclusion. They are in the case of full interchangeability, which requires high precision, costly machine, skilled workers, and ultimately the parts are costly. So whereas, okay, so what happens in the case of interchangeability, it always requires high precision, high accuracy, high costly machines are required, highly skilled laborers are required, they have to pay well, and the production time will be high. So all that will come into the production, increase the production rate, but the quality of the product there will be no compromise. But in the case of selective assembly, what happens? It requires less precision and less costly machine with less skilled labors operate. Therefore, what happens? The product of cheaper product is with less quality, but the functionality will be the same. Okay, which can be although the quality can be maintained by grouping. This is what happens. So this is an overcome of both interchangeability as well as selective assembly. Okay, so we will just end the topic of interchangeability and selective assembly by this today's class. Okay, so next class we will be discussing of the standards of measurement. Okay, so